lálábàárò.
Sweet mother, Àjọkẹ́ Àdé, mommy let us dance. Come on.
Òrìṣà bí aṣọ wọn ò ìyá lálábàárò. Màmá tó gbé mi sínú fóṣù mẹ́sàn-án, ọ̀pọ̀ mi sẹ́yìn fọ́dún mẹ́ta, ó gbé bí mọ́nú torí kí lè jẹ kí lè wọṣọ, ó ṣàlátìlẹ́yìn mi torí kí lè jẹ nìyàn. Láyé ti wá ìyá níyá mi, ìyá lálábàárò, èjìká tí ò jáṣọ ó jábọ́, ẹ bá mi kí màmá mi abiyamọ.
Right, thank you very much for joining us again for the program for today, and that is on OY Media Scotland. Remember, we will be having a guest on the program today. But first of all, let me wish all our viewers in the United States, especially, and some other countries, a happy Mother's Day for all our women, daughters, wives, moms, and aunties. It's our prayer that the Lord God Almighty will continue to make you fruitful and cause you to celebrate many years in return. So today we will, as usual, we are starting with Itan Yoruba by Apeke Ade, and that is Lady IBK Sanusi. After that, we'll be going straight on to the news highlights. Of course, here in Scotland, you know what is on the top of the table now. It's actually the election that has just been concluded. And we've picked some very interesting news highlights, and we'll be bringing that across to you just after the rendition of Ogbojo Odedino Igbo Irumale by Lady IBK Sanusi. And of course, at 6:15, we will be having Mr. Femi Odedeyi from Yoruba Referendum Committee. He will continue to talk to us about Yoruba liberation. You don't want to miss it. Once again, thank you very much for joining in, and we will be back with you shortly.
Ẹ kú kàlẹ̀ ń bẹ̀ wo ọkùnrin obìnrin ọmọdé àti àgbà olólùfẹ́ yín ìbùkún olúwa ọmọ Sànúsí tí ẹ mọ̀ sí Àpèkẹ́ tún dé pẹ̀lú àrà ọ̀tọ̀ àlọ́ tó kún fún ọgbọ́n òye àti ọ̀rọ̀ ìjìnlẹ̀ Yorùbá. Ẹ máa bá wa ká lọ, àṣà Yorùbá kò mọ̀ ní parun.
Mo kí wa káàbọ̀ sí ìtàn lédè Yorùbá pẹ̀lú Àpèkẹ́ Adé. Ìtàn Ògbójú Ọdẹ ní Igbórímọlẹ̀ là ń bá bọ̀. Àwọn akọni wọ́n ti dé ilé Ìrágbèje lójúlé méje. Ìrágbèje ti gbà wọ́n nímọ̀ràn, ti gbà àwọn ọmọdé nímọ̀ràn, ti gbà àwọn òbí nímọ̀ràn. Ní báyìí ó fẹ́ sọ ìtàn ọmọ burúkú ọmọ ìjọ́nà ọmọ ìsọnù kan fún wọn tí orúkọ rẹ̀ ń jẹ́ Àjàntálá. Àjàntálá ìdùn. Ẹ máa bá mi bọ̀. Ní ìgbà kan, obìnrin kan bí ọmọ kan. Ọmọ náà sì lẹ́wà gidigidi. Ṣùgbọ́n bíbí tí wọ́n bí sílẹ̀, ọ̀rọ̀ ló bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí sọ ó ní, báyìí láyé ṣe rí, kí ni mo wá sí? Ní wọn pé báyìí ló burú tó, mo ṣe báyìí á máa dán bí ọ̀run ni. Ẹwọ kò tẹ́wọ́ gégélé, ẹwọ imí ẹran ní ìgboro ìlú, ẹ tún wò dọ̀tí láàrin ọ̀dẹ̀, mo mà gbé náà wà yìí o, mi ò máa ní pẹ́ padà lásọ̀run tèmi o. Ẹ̀yin akíkanjú ẹdẹ, ọmọ tí wọ́n bí lóòjọ́ ni ó ń ṣe báyìí sọ̀rọ̀. Ó ti rí báyìí tán náà ni ó sì ṣí yàrá ìyá rẹ̀. Ó mú kọ̀ìnkọ̀ìn, ó mú ọṣẹ, ó wẹ ara ẹ̀ dáadáa, ó baṣọ bora, ó jókòó lé góńgó. Kò pẹ́ tó jókòó náà nígbà tí ó tún yí wọlé. Kó sì tó jáde, ó jẹ àkàṣù ẹ̀kọ 6 ńláńlá. Ibà jù bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ ṣùgbọ́n ẹ̀kọ tán ni. Níjáde tí ó sì jáde náà, ìgbébí ni ó ń ké. Eléyìí ya gbogbo ìlú lẹ́nu. Láìpẹ́ gbogbo ará ìlú gbọ́, wọ́n sì bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí wá láti wò. Ṣùgbọ́n inú ọmọ yìí kò dùn sí wọn. Nígbà tó dọjọ́ keje tí wọ́n fẹ́ sọ ọmọ náà ní orúkọ, àwọn òbí rẹ̀ fi ilé pọn tí wọ́n fi ọ̀nà ru ọkà. Nígbà tí ó sì tó àkókò àti fún lórúkọ, òun pàápàá dáhùn ó wípé Àjàntálá lórúkọ mi. Látìgbà tí wọ́n ti ń se oúnjẹ ní ọjọ́ tí à ń wí yìí nínú ti ń bí Àjàntálá. Ó sì ṣe ó bọ́ sí àgbàlá níbi tí wọ́n ti ń wá oúnjẹ. Ó mú ṣíbí, ó bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ru ọbẹ̀ tí ó wà lórí iná. Ilé yìí ya gbogbo àwọn tí ó wà níbẹ̀ lẹ́nu. Wọ́n sì bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí wípé ọmọ ọ̀gẹ̀dẹ̀ ní pa ọ̀gẹ̀dẹ̀. Àjàntálá ni ó pa ìyá rẹ̀. Kí l'Àjàntálá gbọ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe? Ló wá pàtó kó gbogbo àwọn tí wọ́n ń wá oúnjẹ, gbogbo wọn bá tú jáde. Inú túbọ̀ bí ó bọ́ sí ibi tí wọ́n ti ń jẹ àsè pàápàá. Ó wá kó pàṣẹ gbogbo wọn. Ó náà ó fẹ́rẹ̀ pa wọn. Àti géńdé àtàgbàlagbà gbìyànjú àti dá ojú ìjà kọ, ṣùgbọ́n agbára rẹ̀ ju tiwọn lọ. Níkẹyìn, olúkúlùkù bá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí rẹ̀ sọ̀rọ̀. Ó náà sì sá tì wọ́n, gbogbo òpópó tú bìyẹ̀. Olúkúlùkù ń ké pe Ọlọ́run rẹ̀. Àtolùgbàlà ni o, àtànábì ni, àtẹlẹ́gùn ni o. Ọjọ́ náà kò dára fún àwọn jásẹ̀jásẹ̀ rárá. Ìrúkèrúdò náà pọ̀ jọjọ. Nígbà tí Àjàntálá lé wọn tó bí òun ti fẹ́, tí ó padà sí ilé, ó bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí pòṣó ní. Ṣẹlẹ̀ ní kọ́gbọ́n ni màá kọ́ yín lọ́gbọ́n. Bí ó ti wí èyí, ó wọ yàrá ìyá rẹ̀. Ó lọ fún àwo 6. Nígbà tí ó sì tún jáde sí ìta, ó ti adìẹ 6 pa. Ọkùnrin kan tí ó dúró lẹ́bàá ibẹ̀ ni, ọmọdé yìí kà ní ọ́ o. Àjàntálá bá gbá olúwa rẹ̀ létí lẹ́ẹ̀mẹ́fà. Ibi tí àtọ̀hún àti ọkùnrin náà sì ti ń jà, ẹnìkan wá láti là wọ́n. Àjàntálá tún tani náà nípa 6. Bí ó ti ta ipá yìí tán ni ó rí àwọn tí ń ta ayò. Wéré ó fìjà sílẹ̀, ó bọ́ sí ibi ayò, ó tún pa 6. Ẹjọ́ rẹ̀ tí ó rí gbogbo nǹkan wọ̀nyí la ẹnu, ó ní ẹnu ẹ̀gbọ́n rẹ̀ náà tún ya dé ìpàkọ́. Àjàntálá wá di ọ̀ràn wọ̀nyí. Ẹ̀yin alágbára ọkùnrin, báyìí ni ọmọ ńlá yìí wu ìwà líle di odidi oṣù kan, tí ó di èèmọ̀ sí ìgboro ìlú, tí ó di ìjàmbá sí òde tí ẹnikẹ́ni kò sì lè mú. Babaláwo kan wà ní ìlú yìí, ológun pátápátá gbà ní. Látìgbà tí ó ti ń gbọ́rọ̀ nípa ọmọ yìí ni ó ti bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí fọ́nù. Ó ní kò sí nǹkan tí ó lè níbẹ̀. Ó ní ayọ̀rùnbọ̀ ni, nítorí pé bẹ́ẹ̀ ni àwọn ayọ̀rùnbọ̀ máa ń ṣe. Àti pé lọ́jọ́ tí òun bá fi ojú kàn án ni ohun gbogbo yóò rọ̀. Òun yóò pa ètò owó òun fún un. Ọkùnrin bá múra, ó wọ ṣòkòtò ńlá kan. Lẹ́yìn èyí ni ó sán ìbàdí òògùn lé e lórí. Lẹ́yìn eléyìí ni ó tó wá wọ agbádá ńlá dúdú kan. Ó dé fìlà òkèrègbè. Ó kó oògùn sínú àpò ifá rẹ̀. Àwọn bíi ikọ́ idẹ, àdó, àtọ̀, ẹyọ owó, ìlẹ̀kẹ̀ tí wọ́n fi eegun ejò ṣe àti oríṣiríṣi nǹkan bẹ́ẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ gbogbo. Ó gbé àpò ifá rẹ̀, ó dilé Àjàntálá. Nígbà tí ó dé ọ̀hún, ó bá níbi tí ó ń gbé jẹun. Nígbà tí ó sì kí Àjàntálá tán, ó jókòó ti ìyá rẹ̀, ó ń bá a sọ̀rọ̀. Ohun tí ó kó ba ọkùnrin yìí lẹ́rù ni pé oúnjẹ tí ó wà níwájú ọmọ yìí ó tó ti ènìyàn 10. Òkèlè rẹ̀ kọ̀ọ̀kan sì tó ti ẹni 6 rigidi lórí. Kò sẹ́ni tí ó lè bá Àjàntálá jẹun kí olúwa rẹ̀ yó. Ibi tí ọkùnrin yìí àti ìyá ọmọ náà ti ń sọ̀rọ̀, wọ́n dárúkọ rẹ̀. Kí ni Àjàntálá gbọ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe ló bá dìde. Ó gbé àkàṣù ẹ̀kọ́ kan, ó lẹ̀ mọ́ ọkùnrin yìí láyà. Ó gbé ọbẹ̀ tí ó fi ń jẹun, ó dà lé lórí. Ó pa gburu sí i, ó fún agbádá mọ́ ọlọ́run. Ó gba àpò ifá rẹ̀, ó kó ògbó lórí. Ó nà títí àpò náà fi já. Níbi tí wọ́n sì ti ń dà rẹ̀ ká, ó yí agbádá mọ́ ọkùnrin yìí lórí. Ó tú ìbàdí òògùn di rẹ̀, ó kó ògbó. Ìyẹn ara wa. Nígbà tí ọwọ́ ba ọkùnrin yìí tán, ló bá fi gbé ta. Nígbà tí ó jàjà lè yọ orí nínú agbádá, ó bọ́ agbádá sílẹ̀ ló bá fi ré sí i. Àjàntálá sátẹ̀lé, ó lè dé ilé rẹ̀ kókó kí ó tó dẹ̀yìn. Ṣé ni arákùnrin yìí rí pàtó? Ṣòkòtò nìkan ni ó kù sí ìdí rẹ̀. Ṣé ni ọkùnrin yìí ní hẹlẹ? Nígbà tí ọkùnrin náà dé ilé, gbogbo ènìyàn wá sí ọ̀dọ̀ rẹ̀. wọ́n á béèrè ohun tí ó bí ọ̀hún sí rí. Ọkùnrin yìí dáwọ́ ní ọ̀ràn ọmọ ni ọmọ náà tó tọ́, ọmọ burúkú pátápátá ni. Látọjọ́ tí mo ti dé inú ayé n kò tí ì kan nǹkan tí ó tó ètò tòní rí. Kí ni ọmọ náà kò ṣe tán? Ó lù mí bí ẹni pé kí n kú, ó fi ìyà jẹ bí ẹni pé kí n ṣàìsàn, ó fà mí ká bí ẹni pé kí ó fi orí mi nà àpáta. Ọmọ náà fi ojú mi kànkán. Ọ̀rọ̀ náà ya àwọn tí ó wà níbẹ̀ lẹ́nu. Wọ́n ní òun mà kúkú lé o, ohun tí ó ti ṣe tí bàbá fi sá wálé, ẹ kò mọ oògùn lọ́wọ́ ni. Bàbá yìí tún dáwọ́ ní oògùn àbí ńlá, ojú iná ni ewùrà ń hu irun. Kí ni ẹ fi ń ṣeré yìí? Ẹni tí ó nà mí tí ó gbà mí lágbádá, tó fi ìbàǹtẹ́ oògùn mi ṣe pàṣán náà mi, èyí rápò fà mí mú. Ó ti gba gbogbo tí mo ní pátápátá. Ó ló yọ sí mo, èrò kékeré kọ́ ni ọmọ náà pa. Ọ̀kan nínú wọn tí ó wà níbẹ̀ tún béèrè lọ́wọ́ rẹ̀ báyìí pé ẹ̀wù àwọ̀tẹ́lẹ̀ yín dà, ó tún gba fìlà ni. Inú bí ọkùnrin yìí ó ní ẹyẹ bí mi ní ìbéèrè òṣì jàre, àbájọ náà ń béèrè irùngbọ̀n. Mo ní ó ti gba ohun gbogbo tí mo ní, ẹ tún ń béèrè fìlà. Ẹ rò pé bí mo dúró kò ní gba ṣòkòtò pàápàá ni. A kì í mọ̀ ẹni tí ó bá rí nínú yín tó tètè sá o. Bí olúwa rẹ̀ bá sá, ó ń fi ikú ṣeré ni o. Bí ẹ bá sì sá wálé, wọn ò tì í sóde, kò ní jẹ́ kí ẹnikẹ́ni gbé ọ̀ràn dé ni wọ́n lé. Báyìí ni Àjàntálá di ọ̀ràn sí ilé tí ìyá rẹ̀ kò sì lè fi ara da ìyọnu náà mọ́. Ó mú ọmọ burúkú yìí, ó di inú igbó. Nígbà tí ó dé ọ̀hún, ó rọra fi ẹ̀tàn fi sílẹ̀. Ìyá náà sì bá ilé wá, ó kù ọmọ náà sọ́hùn. Ibi tí Àjàntálá ti ń rìn káàkiri nínú igbó, ó dé ibì kan tí àwọn ẹranko márùn-ún wọ̀nyí wà tí wọ́n ń gbé ní ìrẹ́pọ̀. Erin, kìnìún, ẹkùn, ìkookò àti ewúrẹ́. Àjàntálá bẹ̀ wọ́n kí wọ́n jẹ́ kí òun máa bá wọn gbé, kí òun máa ṣe ìránṣẹ́ fún wọn, ni wọ́n gbà síbẹ̀. Ọ̀kọ̀ọ̀kan ni àwọn ẹranko wọ̀nyí máa ń jáde lọ wá oúnjẹ lójoojúmọ́. Bí ẹnìkan bá lọ wá oúnjẹ, àwọn yòókù á jókòó dè ní ilé. Ìgbà tẹ́ni tí ó lọ wá oúnjẹ bá sì dé, gbogbo wọn á jọ jẹ. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni tí wọ́n jọ ń gbé pọ̀ títí tí kò sì sí ìjà, tí kò sí ìta, àfìgbà tí ọmọ burúkú yìí dé sí àárín wọn. Òun dé sí ibẹ̀ lálẹ́ báyìí, ewúrẹ́ sì ni oúnjẹ wíwá kàn níjọ́ kejì. Àjàntálá ti jó lálẹ́ ọjọ́ tí ó dé, kò jẹ́ nítorí tí ó sì jẹ́ àlejò láàrin wọn. Nígbà tó di òwúrọ̀ ọjọ́ kejì, kìnìún pé gbogbo wọn jọ. Ó wí fún wọn pé níwọ̀n bí àwọn ti ní ìránṣẹ́ nísinsìnyí, ó dára pé bí ẹnìkan nínú àwọn bá ń lọ wá oúnjẹ, kí ìránṣẹ́ tuntun náà máa bá a lọ. Àjàntálá àti àwọn ẹranko yòókù sì fi ayọ̀ pàtẹ́wọ́ pé ìmọ̀ràn tí kìnìún mú wá dára. Nígbà tí ilẹ̀ ta díẹ̀, ewúrẹ́ múra ó di igbó oúnjẹ. Àjàntálá tẹ̀lé. Nígbà táwọn méjì dé ọ̀hún, ewúrẹ́ ń wá oúnjẹ ń ṣeré. Ewúrẹ́ dákẹ́ wípé òun kò ní ní lára lọ́jọ́ náà, pé kò tí ì gbọ́n ni. Lẹ́yìn tí ó wá oúnjẹ tí ó dì sínú àpò tán, ó pe Àjàntálá kí ó wá gbé ẹrù. Nígbà tí Àjàntálá sì dé ọ̀dọ̀ rẹ̀, ṣe ni ó di ewúrẹ́ ní ẹsẹ̀ mú, tí ó ń fi ẹ̀yìn rẹ̀ lé ilẹ̀, tí ó sì ń ká ní ìpà tí ojú onítọ̀hún rí gudugudu. Ewúrẹ́ ké, ṣùgbọ́n kò rí ẹni gbà á, àfìgbà tí ó tó fi sílẹ̀. Nígbà tó sì fi sílẹ̀ tán, ó wí fún báyìí pé bí o bá délé wí fún ẹnikẹ́ni pé mo lò ó gbé. Lẹ́yìn tí ewúrẹ́ sinmi tán, ó gbé ẹrù rẹ̀ ó ń lọ. Àjàntálá náà tẹ̀lé. Nígbà tó kù díẹ̀ kí wọ́n dé àgọ́, ó sọ fún ewúrẹ́ pé kó gbé ẹrù náà fún òun. Òun sì ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀. Láìpẹ́ wọ́n yọ sí abúlé. Nígbà tí àwọn ẹranko yòókù sì rí ojú ewúrẹ́ lẹ́ẹ̀kan ṣoṣo, gbogbo wọn bá ké ha, tí wọ́n sì béèrè ohun tí ó ṣe é. Ṣùgbọ́n dípò kí ó sọ òótọ́, ó purọ́. Ó dáhùn wípé ibi tí mo ti ń wá oúnjẹ ká ni mo ti fi orí gbé ilé àwọn yìí, tí wọ́n bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ta mí. Bí mo sì ti pẹ̀yìn dà ni mo pàdé ogunlọ́gọ̀ àwọn agbọ́n tí wọ́n bò mí pìtìpìtì. Ìwọ̀nyí ló jẹ́ kí ìpéǹpéjú mi bò mí lójú, tẹ́ kò fi rí ẹyin lójú mi. Níjọ́ kejì, ó kan ìkookò láti wá oúnjẹ. Àjàntálá tún tẹ̀lé. Nígbà tí ìkookò náà máa padà dé lálẹ́, ojú rẹ̀ wú, gbogbo ara rẹ̀ sì bò fẹ́lẹ́fẹ́lẹ́. Nígbà tí wọ́n bí ohun tí ó ṣe, ó dáhùn wípé wọ́n tó ṣe ewúrẹ́ lánàá ló ṣe ìkookò lónìí, gbogbo wa ni yóò ṣe kárí. Ewúrẹ́ wò lójú kọ̀rọ̀, àwọn méjì ní orí. ṣùgbọ́n àjàntálá ò sọ pé òun rí wọn. Ọmọ Ọ̀yọ́ ni. Kí a má bá ọ̀rọ̀ gùn lọ títí, bẹ́ẹ̀ ni àjàntálá ṣe sí gbogbo wọn títí ó fi kan kìnìún o. Lálẹ́ ọjọ́ tí ó fi ìyà jẹ kìnìún ni àwọn ẹranko márààrún yìí péjọ. Wọ́n ní ó yẹ kí àwọn wá fi àgọ́ yìí sílẹ̀ fún un nítorí pé hílàhílo náà pọ̀ jù. Ewúrẹ́ ní èyí tí òun rí níbẹ̀ ni pé kí àwọn má fa ọ̀rọ̀ náà gùn lọ títí, kí àwọn kúkú fi àgọ́ náà sílẹ̀ lówùúrọ̀ ọjọ́ kejì. Ìmọ̀ràn yìí tọ́ lójú gbogbo wọn. Wéré wọ́n di igbá wọn di àwo wọn lálẹ́ ọjọ́ yìí. Wọ́n sì fi ohùn sí pé bí ilẹ̀ bá ti ń mọ́ háì lówùúrọ̀ ọjọ́ kejì ni kí àwọn kó ẹsẹ̀ sí ọ̀nà. Ṣùgbọ́n gbogbo èrò tí wọ́n pa yìí, ọwọ́ àjàntálá ni wọ́n pa á lè. Nígbà tí àjàntálá mọ̀ pé wọ́n sùn tán, ó mú ewé ó fi di ara rẹ̀, ó bọ́ sínú ẹrù tí wọ́n dì. Ṣé àjàntálá pàápàá kò gùn ju ẹsẹ̀ kan àbọ̀ lọ? Ní kùtùkùtù ọjọ́ kejì, wọ́n kó ẹsẹ̀ sí ọ̀nà, wọ́n ń sá lọ. Nígbà tí wọ́n rìn díẹ̀, ebi ń pa ewúrẹ́, ó sì ń fẹ́ jí díẹ̀ jẹ lára oúnjẹ tí wọ́n dì sínú ẹrù. Ó sọ fún àwọn yòókù pé òun fẹ́ ṣe ìgbọ̀nsẹ̀ kí wọ́n máa lọ dé òun. Ṣùgbọ́n irọ́ ni ó ń pa, oúnjẹ ni ó fẹ́ jẹ. Lẹ́yìn tí wọ́n lọ tó bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí tú ẹrù, ó sì ti fi eyín já ewé tí àjàntálá fi di ara rẹ̀. Tí ọ̀rẹ́ ní àjàntálá fò mọ́, ó lù ú fẹ́rẹ̀ pa. Ó gbé wọ́n lẹ̀ púpọ̀, ewúrẹ́ kò ní gbàgbé ọjọ́ náà láéláé. Níkẹyìn ó fi ewúrẹ́ sílẹ̀, ó sì sọ fún un kí ó di òun padà, kí ó sì ṣe ẹnu rẹ̀ jẹ́. Bó bá dé iwájú kí ó gbé ẹrù náà fún ìkookò bóyá ìṣọ́ ajẹ́ ṣe ìkookò, kí ó tù òun wò. Ewúrẹ́ ń gbé ẹrù, ó tẹsẹ̀ mọ́ ìrìn ń lọ. Láìpẹ́ ó bá àwọn èrò iwájú tí wọ́n jọ ń lọ. Nígbà tí wọ́n rìn díẹ̀, ó wí pé kí ìkookò náà wá gba ẹrù torí pé ó rẹ̀wọ̀n. Ìkookò sì gbà á. Èrò kan náà tí ewúrẹ́ kọ́rò tún bọ́ sínú ìkookò, ó tún fẹ́ ṣe ìgbọ̀nsẹ̀ èké. Àmọ́ lílù tí àjàntálá lù ú ní tèyí púpọ̀, kò sí ẹni tí ó ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ lu ìkookò rí. Ó fẹ́ ké ṣùgbọ́n àjàntálá fún lọ́rùn. Àjàntálá náà kúkú ju kóńkó lọ. Ìkookò bẹ̀bẹ̀ títí ṣùgbọ́n kò gbọ́ àfi ìgbà tí ó tó lù ú tí ó tẹ́ lọ́rùn ló tó fi sílẹ̀. Nígbà tó fi ìkookò sílẹ̀ tán, ó wí fún kí ó yára di òun, kí ó gbé òun sínú ẹrù. Bí ó bá dé ọ̀dọ̀ àwọn ẹgbẹ́ rẹ̀, kí ó gbé òun fún ọ̀kan nínú wọn, àti pé bí ìkookò kò bá yára ṣe ojú gírí, òun yóò kú láàánú lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí. Wéré ìkookò ti nu ojú nù, ó ní ẹni tó gun ọ̀pẹ tí ó dorí kodò, ó tójú wá lójú rí. Báyìí ni ọmọ ńlá yìí ṣe ń lu gbogbo. Erin ló lù níkẹyìn, ó sì ti kí erin mọ́lẹ̀ ní erin fán. Erin fi eré sí àjàntálá náà tẹ̀lé. Láìpẹ́ wọ́n bá àwọn èrò iwájú. Atẹ́rin àti àwọn yòókù sì gbọ́n eré bí ẹni gbọ̀n òun. Ọ̀rán di gbò lọ́yà fún mi. Olúkúlùkù bẹ̀rẹ̀ mú igbe. Ewúrẹ́ ń ké mẹ́ẹ̀, ìkookò ń bú. Ohun ẹkùn ń rin ilẹ̀ dòdò. Kìnìún ń kú bí òjò, erin sì ń fà. Níkẹyìn àjàntálá gba ọ̀nà mìíràn láti pàdé wọn níwájú. Lóòótọ́ ó dé iwájú sí wọn. Ó wo igi ńlá kan báyìí tí ó wà lẹ́bàá ọ̀nà, ó gùn. Wọ́n bóyá bí wọ́n bá dé abẹ́rẹ́ igi náà, wọn yóò fẹ́ láti sìn. Láìpẹ́ náà ni wọ́n dá àrẹ̀rẹ̀ igi. Nígbà tí wọ́n sì dé abẹ́ igi, lóòótọ́ wọ́n ní ó yẹ kí àwọn sinmi díẹ̀ nítorí ó pẹ́ díẹ̀ tí wọ́n ti gbúrò àjàntálá mọ́. Wọn kò mọ̀ pé àjàntálá wà lókè. Ẹ̀rí pa mí mo rẹ́rìn. Ọmọ ọ̀sán ọmọ ìyọnu. Kódà kò tiẹ̀ sọ̀rọ̀ tí mo fẹ́ sọ mọ́, torí mo ti mọ̀ pé ẹ̀yin náà ti mọ̀ pé ìjàngbọ̀n ó kàǹkàn wọ̀ ní àjàntálá. Màá máa tẹ̀síwájú ìtàn yìí lọ́sẹ̀ tó ń bọ̀ torí ìtàn sì ṣèbẹ̀ ní pọ̀ díẹ̀. Kẹ́ ẹ máa wà lálàáfíà, ẹ má rìn jù o. Títí ọ̀sẹ̀ tó ń bọ̀, ẹ wo Àpèkẹ́ Adé ló kí i pé ó dàbọ̀.
Ẹ kú kàlẹ̀ ń bẹ̀ wo ọkùnrin, obìnrin, ọmọdé àti àgbà olólùfẹ́ yín ìbùkún olúwa ọmọ Sànúsí tí ẹ mọ̀ sí Àpèkẹ́ tún dé pẹ̀lú àrà ọ̀tọ̀ àlọ́ tó kún fún ọgbọ́n, òye àti ọ̀rọ̀ ìjìnlẹ̀ Yorùbá. Ẹ máa bá wa ká lọ. Àṣà Yorùbá kò mọ̀ nípa ara.
Àgbàrá òjò lówó nílé wo bí sọ́dún onílé ní òní gbà fún un. Èé ti rí èé ti ṣe. Àkọ́kọ́ dáyé àṣebáyé gún kárìnrìn gbalaka sọ̀rọ̀ balala. Òpẹ́ kò ní ìnáwó láti gbọ́. Ṣé Fúlàní yóò wá borí wa ni? Àgbààgbà nílẹ̀ Yorùbá ẹ dìde o. Ẹ̀yin Àgbẹ̀kọ̀yà ẹ dìde. Ogun Fúlàní ò gbọ́dọ̀ borí wa. Tani yóò padà táyé sí o.
Ẹ̀yin àgbààgbà ìlú kí ló dé o? Ẹ̀yin ṣòro bí ewé kí ló dé? Ẹ̀yin ṣe èèyàn bí ọ̀gá èyí ti ṣe. Àgbà ìlú aṣòro yé mi.
Wọ́n bá wá ní bàbá.
Right. And then we have Mr. Odedeyi right on here. You are most welcome to the program, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon or good evening. And thank you for inviting me once again. Thank you.
Right, you're welcome. Mr. Odedeyi is joining us from the United States of America.
Yes.
And it's always with us every two weeks discussing about Yoruba liberation. Mr. Odedeyi is the coordinator of Yoruba Referendum Committee, and they've got a petition going on at the moment to have the Yoruba people petition the State House of Assembly in the Yoruba land, the state in the Yoruba land, both the governors and the members of the State of Assembly, for them to pass the referendum bill into law, so that the Yoruba people could decide which way they want to go regarding the situation in Nigeria. So today we'll be talking about progress, and also we'll be bringing forward some of the challenges and things that are happening in Nigeria, especially in relation to the Yoruba movement. I know that you want to, most time, you just want to, if I ask you to tell us about yourself, I know you don't really want to say much, but then I will take you on that route again, because it's quite very important, so that people will be able to know your experience and things you've been involved with. And I think that adds to the pack. So if you permit me again, so I'm going to put you right on. Mr. Femi Odedeyi, the journey so far.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your efforts and the efforts of all our listeners in trying to get this thing done. First of all, it's not that experience is not good, but you know, sometimes experience can be misleading. One can actually truncate a quest by one's experience, because you may be limited by that experience and not be able to adjust to unfolding circumstances. So when I'm reticent about what I've done and blah blah blah, so sorry to use that language. It is within that context, and I want people to understand it. But that doesn't mean I won't say anything. I will. It's just that I am, like I have always said, by the grace of God, I am who I am, and I'm grateful to God for keeping me up to this time to be able to be part of the liberation of humanity, of which Yoruba liberation is part of. And anything that I've done in the past, it was a reflection of that existence, and that we are doing it now, especially within the context of the world as it is, should give us a sort of joy, a sort of happiness, a sort of reverence for God, that we will not waste the time. We will not waste this time. So in short, what I'm saying is that what we are doing now as in the Yoruba Referendum Committee is a progression of what we had started during the military rule of Abacha, which exposed the nature of the African society, the African post-colonial state, as an impediment to human development. So the nation state was created by colonial forces to maintain its colonial rule, and therefore, because colonialism is anti-African development, the form of state it created directly impacts on the level of underdevelopment that we have. So when we were doing all those things and everybody was doing his own thing, that was when we came up with the idea that, well, for the Yoruba people, we need to re-examine our state within that Nigerian contraption. So we started the process for a Yoruba Constituent Assembly that will draft a Yoruba constitution, and which we did. We succeeded in doing it. And we had prominent Yoruba people. That's why I kept saying, my own experience, you have people like Bishop Bonigi, Bishop Emmanuel Bolanle Bonigi, the Bishop of Akure Diocese. You have Mr. Akonde, he was a son. You have Mrs. Kuye. You have Mr. Sesu Akonde, who was the secretary to the Western State government in 1976, and who actually initiated the move to convert the WNDC, Western Nigeria Development Corporation, into what we now know as Odedeyi investment, because he saw that the military at that time was going to cover the Western states and the Yoruba states, and then by doing that, they can destroy the WNDC, which was the vehicle for economic development, for economic development started by the Awolowo regime. So he initiated the move to create Odedeyi Investment as a holding company for all the companies that were created, established under the WNDC. So that's why we have Odedeyi Investment today, despite all the problems that it underwent and all that. So we have people like that were involved in the production of the draft Yoruba Constitution. So I'm just a tiny speck in the mighty ocean. So, and of course, we had prominent politicians. The Oyo State governor at that time, Lamade Shina, actually had this executive committee, that is the executive council of the Oyo State government, actually sat down, debated the draft constitution, and approved it as the executive council of Oyo State. Yes. At that time, as the governor of Lagos State, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the well-known Asiwaju of today, put all the media resources at his disposal to assist us in propagating all these things that we are doing at that time. The then governor of Ondo State, Ade Farati, also sent his own representative. So it was a collective effort that brought it about. So when I say that I thank God for putting me in that, then you will understand where I'm coming from. That if I will be like what the Yoruba will call Alaimore, if I just come on and start reading, I did this, I was the secretary of this, I was the champion of this, I was the chairman of this. Those things can become impediments. But we should recognize the fact that God has kept us alive so that we can do what we are doing. And we thank God that a lot of Yoruba, even today, as we are doing the Yoruba referendum committee today, quite a lot of leaders are in support of what we are doing. And we do interact with them. Generally, this is what we want to do, this is how we want to do it, and stuff like that. So we should be thankful all of us should be thankful and are particularly grateful that I'm part of that process. I don't know whether that's a good introduction.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. There is a sort of a school of thoughts that the actual problem in Nigeria, where we have got to where we are, is leadership rather than system of government. What's your take on that?
It's not. I don't subscribe to that. If there's going to be a leadership, there must be something to lead.
Yes,
and
definitely.
then if there's going to be a system, there must be something to project, promote, and protect. So that's what is lacking in Nigeria is therefore not leadership or system, but shall I call it a quest, a definition of who we are. When we define who we are, the leadership that will protect and promote it, and the system to bring it about will either emerge or be imposed, whichever way it comes into being. And I will give you an example, a current example from Scotland. You know, with the recent elections in Scotland and the victory of the SNP and the other independence parties, you know, Boris Johnson is now saying that Nicola Sturgeon should come and they should discuss and this and this and that. They should now discuss the way forward and blah, 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 and all kinds of stuff like that. Why did Boris Johnson say that? The Scottish people, despite the defeat of the 2014 independence referendum, still gave support and legitimacy to those championing their independence. And it was reflected in the results of the last election. Therefore, the leadership, although that leadership had been in existence, was there. The leadership will not be there if the independence quest had been defeated. Let's say after 2014, after the defeat of the Scottish referendum in 2014, the Conservative Party now took over Holyrood in Scotland. It is not the leadership that will now be called. They won't call anybody because they are already part of the whole thing. So, but because that quest for independence existed, it threw up its own leadership, even despite the conflict between Sturgeon and what's the guy's name? Alexander. Yeah, the movement still retained its touch, and the leadership emerged, even when Salmon formed his own party and all that. So that sustained the leadership and the system that will bring it about through their government and all this and all that. So in our own case, what we have is you have a disparate contest for influence among the various leadership. So in Yoruba land, you now have Afenifere, you have Ilana, you have Yoruba this, Yoruba that, or everybody. There is all kinds of stuff like that. And then they will be complaining that we are not speaking with one voice. How can we speak with one voice when we don't even have one direction to go? How can we build a system when we have no clear idea of what you want to build? Even in terms of economic philosophy, we just talk about Awolowo. Awolowo had an economic philosophy that led to the establishment of the action group and Egbe Omoduduwa and all that. So that is a missing link. So when that is missing, all kinds of problems will arise, and then we'll start talking about all kinds of solutions which will not even address the problem. So that's why I said the issue is not leadership, because maybe all these organizations have leaders now. So why are we saying we have no leadership when we have leaders in existence? It is because there is nothing to lead. There is nothing to lead. Therefore, we say there is no leadership. So what we need to do is to create something to be led.
Yes.
Like the Scottish people have done. It is to create something to be led. That something becomes the voice, and any leader that wants to dilly-dally among, will have himself to, that's why when they argue among themselves, the argument or the discussion is not centered on that quest. It is whether somebody has collected money somewhere, or somebody is working for somebody, or some
Right.
politician is paying off another person, all kinds of things like that. Why? Because there's nothing to lead, nothing to be led. That's why I said I don't agree with that
With
characterization.
that, man. Okay. I'm still going to pull you back to like pre-60s or thereabout. The sayings of the Yoruba, and I think we've mentioned it severally. I will say it in Yoruba. When it's ọmọdé bá ṣubú, ó máa wo wájú. Ṣùgbọ́n tí àgbà bá ṣubú, ó máa wo ẹ̀yìn. If a child falls, his or her focus will be at the front, while if an elderly person falls down, he looks back just to assess what made him to fall. Some people are saying that our founding fathers, I mean, even the ones that represented the Yoruba people and co, that from some of their statements back in the 60s, they seem to know that this union is not really going to work, but they still go ahead. So people are saying, could it be that maybe unconsciously, and that's why I have to put it unconsciously, that maybe they unconsciously laid a trap for us? Would you also agree with that? Your thoughts?
Yes and no. And this is what I mean by that. During the independence struggle, Nigeria is not alone in the anti-colonial movement.
Yes.
There are various forces on the continent that are also struggling for independence in their own right. That was how you find the OAU came into being. And the famous statement credited to Nkrumah at that time, that all the boundaries in Africa are artificial boundaries and they should not be respected, which is true. It's a true historical statement. So, so it is within this context that our fathers also became active in the independence anti-colonial struggles. There was a meeting in Accra in 1958, organized by Nkrumah. Ghana became independent in 1957.
Yes.
And then Nkrumah said their independence is meaningless unless other African countries become independent. So in 1958, he organized an all people's conference, which was attended by all the different anti-colonial movements and individuals and all that, to discuss the way forward for Africa. So it is within that context that we can situate the Nigerian issue. Now, prior to the conference, he actually came to Nigeria. That was Nkrumah. He came to Nigeria and met with Awolowo in Ibadan. And Awolowo discussed, his own view about federalism, about African federalism, and how it should be the new form of state. But because Nkrumah and, quote unquote, and the militant group, they just wanted the Europeans out, everything. So they didn't take heed to that context. And if you now try to come to the present, that is what the problem is in the African country today, where one nationality wants to suppress the rest so that they can take over, which is what we are experiencing in Nigeria today. So within that time, all these debates arose. And actually in the Nigerian context, two of the three regions, the Eastern region and the Western region, opted for independence, and the Northern region refused. And then Britain played the first one, that unless two regions go along, they won't grant independence and all that. Now you can say At that time, the Western region ought to have decided to go it alone. Maybe they will succeed, maybe they will not. But if you look at the context of that time, they are not likely to succeed, and the Yoruba land will have been isolated. The reason is the emergence, the general prevailing Pan-Africanist attitude has not even come to the realization that nationalities can be self-determining. Everybody was still thinking in terms of the colonial creation. So if Yoruba land, it would have been like what happened in the Congo at that time, when the Kasavubu and the Katanga, the Katangis in the Congo declared their independence, and they just labeled them tribalists and all that, and then used that to destroy the independence of Congo and Lumumba. So in the Nigerian context, before that time, the Azikiwes and all these people who call themselves nationalists have been labeling the Yoruba as tribalists, Pakistanis, they want to balkanize the country and all that. So if the West had gone it alone at that time, they would be faced with hostility even from within the ranks of the colonial, anti-colonial movement at that time. So they had to weigh that was why one of the reasons for the debate between Awolowo and this Oyo Bashorun Oyo, the Bode Thomas at that time. Bode Thomas was rooting for a regional party, that Action Group should be a regional party, and Awolowo was saying no because of all these constitutions and all that. So within that context, it would have been difficult for the Western region to simply, despite, Awolowo said Nigeria is a 1945 geographical expression.
Yes.
Now, take that. Now, during the Civil War, or by the time of the Biafra Civil War, the Yoruba, before then, by the time of the Wetie and all that, other people are also saying, Awolowo should not have gone to the center. He should just have remained in the West. And all. But the question is, if he hadn't gone to the center and remained in the West, the contradictions of Nigeria will not be this sharp. Because eventually, Awolowo, as Premier of the West, will have to run out of his term in office. Even though he might have done this and done that and created a stable economy and all that, if the then alliance between the East and the North did not destroy him or attempt to destroy him and therefore bring the war to the West at that time, when he runs out of office, who knows what will have happened? So that by going to the center, it was probably a smart move on his part so that the contradictions of Nigeria can be brought starkly into the open, like the Anglo Defense Pact in 1961. If he had not been the leader of opposition, he would not have been able to resist the introduction of that act. The motion to create more regions, he would not have been able to do that. Even as Premier of Western Region, he would not have been able to pursue it if he was not the leader of opposition in Lagos. And so having said that, by the time of the war, there was a meeting of Yoruba leaders and leaders of thought in Ibadan, which Awolowo also addressed, and he laid out specific conditions for Yoruba people to continue with the Nigerian effort. Between that time and a short while, you now have Biafran soldiers invading Yoruba land. And at that time, the Western region had already negotiated. We were not in the army, except a few officers here and there. People don't normally, Yoruba people now, didn't normally want to go to the army because they look at it as if, it's nothing. So we had a few officers. So we had northern soldiers in Yoruba land. And Awolowo and his leadership had already negotiated the removal of those
yes.
from Yoruba. So we had no army. It was during that time that Biafra sent its soldiers to Yoruba land under the guise of helping Yoruba. Nobody asked them. They said, and then they said when they take over Yoruba land, they should be asking for directives from Enugu. And whatever we might say about Obasanjo told Victor Bajo, if you want to come to Lagos, you are not going to come through Oreo, go to Okitipupa. You know why? By the time he gets to Okitipupa, they will run out of steam. Anyway, that was the situation at that time. So now we are now faced with an advancing army from the east, a northern political hegemony. And so what do we do? So we have to pitch our tent in such a way that we neither fell to the north nor fall to the east. So by being part of that coalition, we were able to sustain and retain Yoruba land at least for a while.
Yeah.
And not be run over. So in a sense, that's why I said it is a yes or no. I mean, yes and no question.
Yes and no.
So
Yes.
now with that background, and these things can be checked though, it's not things that I made up. They can easily be corroborated or refuted. The question now is, having seen where we are, and because of that, we have got to this stage, what do we do at this point to effect our desires, which had been in existence since the formation of Egbe Omoduduwa? That was why you find that it is only Yoruba land that any talk of, whether you call it federalism or you call it restructuring or you call it anything, that is the backbone of our political engagement. So now the question now is, how do we resolve that problem in such a manner that we don't need to be helpless, that we just have to take a side? I don't know whether I should answer that question now.
We are coming back to that. Yes, we'll come to that. So, but we'll have a short break just now, and we will come back after the break. So, thanks, viewers. Please do stay on with us. I'm still with Mr. Odedeyi, and after these short ads, we will have him back.
Àgbàrá òjò lówó nílé wo bí sọdún onílé ní òní gbà fún un. Èé ti rí èé ti ṣe, àkọ́kọ́ dáyé àṣebáyé kún kárin nìkan la ká sọ̀rọ̀ balala. Òpẹ́ kò ní ìnáwó láti gbọ́. Ṣé Fúlàní yóò wá borí ìlànà? Àgbààgbà nílẹ̀ Yorùbá ẹ dìde o. Ẹ̀yin Àgbẹ̀kọ̀yà ẹ dìde. Ogun Fúlàní ò gbọ́dọ̀ borí wa. Ani yóò padà táyé ṣe o.
Ẹ̀yin àgbààgbà ìlú kí ló dé o? Tẹ̀mí ìṣòro bí ewé kí ló dé? Ẹ ń ṣe yan bí ọba, èyí ti ṣe àgbà ìlú aṣòro yéèdè.
Yeah, you're all welcome back. I'm still with Mr. Femi Odedeyi from Yoruba Referendum Committee. You're welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Where we stopped, we've spoken about the yes and no response to that question, and you've obviously analyzed why they had to take that direction. Now coming to the time of regional government in Yoruba land, and which is the golden era that we always refer to now in Yoruba land. Now, despite those impediments from the challenges of the fact that the Yoruba couldn't go all alone because of the circumstances around that time, we'll still see that during the regional government, we had quite progress. In fact, when we talk about progress today, we still point back to that time what was on. So when we look at that era, and despite the fact that the Yoruba land is still within that one Nigeria, what made the difference? How were we able to achieve those development? Is it the leadership? Is it the direction taken by the Yoruba people? Or is it purely political sagacity?
all of the above. But the thing is this, before we came to that regional arrangement, like I said earlier, there was an idea that provided leadership. And what was the idea? In 1937 or 49 or so, there was a pan-Nigerian movement called the Nigerian Youth Movement, which essentially collapsed based on some issues within themselves. And that was what led Awolowo to go and review the entire anti-colonial project. That was how he came to write that book, The Problems of Nigeria, where that famous quotation was taken. Nigeria is a mere geographical expression.
Yes.
So when he came to that conclusion, he now set up the Egbe Omo Oduduwa. Actually, when he established the Egbe Omo Oduduwa, he invited even the Igbos and Sikh and all of them to come and join. They refused. So, but that's another story. So what we are saying now is that the idea was that Yoruba people have the capacity for self-realization. And it is anchored on their history, their culture, their everything. So how do we harness all this into a political pursuit and into a project? So when they started Egbe Omo Oduduwa, they had what they call the history project, which was headed by the late Professor Saburi Biobaku, which is now known as the Ibadan School of History at the University of Ibadan. And they went into the sociology of the Yoruba. There was a book by one sociologist, Eni Fadipe, called The Sociology of the Yoruba, which they wanted to publish, but they didn't have the money to publish it at that time. So they went into all these things and came up with a blueprint of how to achieve them. That provided the idea. And from that idea came the leadership. When the issue now came up, they now have to, because of the various agitations and the collapse of the world economy, that the colonialism cannot be sustained the way it was used to be sustained, the British had to bow to certain colonial demands and then said, okay, what do we do? So they started their constitutional stuff and all that. So they had a constitution in 1947, which was a unitary constitution, as it were. And the Awolowos and all the rest protested against it. And that protest led to the various constitutional conferences. The various constitutional conferences in Ibadan and in London ended up with the Macpherson Constitution and the Independence Constitution. And what those did was to give each of the regions, of course, largely dominated by all the political parties, the latitude to develop themselves. So all the things that they did in Egbe Omo Oduduwa, the historical, cultural, and of course, because of the world economy at that time, they had relationship with different sectors of the world, so they were able to have a vision of economic development centered on developmental economics and developmental finance. So they were able to put all these things together into the action group, which in Yoruba language was called Afenifere. Freedom for all, life more abundant, which was translated as Afenifere. Now, the issue now is, because you have that leadership emerged, that whose fidelity is to that concept. And they were able to create a system out of it. That is the Independence Constitution. And the Independence Constitution gave them a wide latitude. The Western region was able to loan money to the central government at that time. Yes, they were able to, give them loans. Unlike now, where even the federal government is borrowing money from everyone. Anyway, so that is what I'm saying, that I doubt it. I'm not saying that will have been the case, but I doubt it if the process had not started with Awolowo's rethinking of the entire colonial project that made him come to the formation of Egbe Omoduduwa, and then later the action group as a political platform to achieve it. They would not have been able to challenge colonialism and not being able to create the political space that they needed at that time for the for everything that they did. So that's why I said all of the above. That you also know that when those things were happening, there were many Yoruba that were opposed to Action Group now. In fact, the first election, when the Action Group was in power in the Western region, they had a federal election in 1954. And the Action Group lost the election to the House of Representatives. Why? Because people in Ijesha and Ekiti were saying they are taking their children to farm. Because of free primary education, they were taking, so they have no farm. They won't want anything to do with it. But Awolowo said, okay, no problem. We need to go back to the drawing board. And tool ourselves. So they went back to the drawing board. By the time the next election, when the Jeshas and it is now, so these people are making progress, so they just went and voted for them. So that's what we are saying. That because they were able to conceptualize what they wanted based on the realities that existed, they were able to create a leadership. And all those people that even testified against Awolowo and the treasonable fellow, maybe they were part of the Action Group now. But, where did they end up? And the same thing in the Second Republic and all that. So there will be people like that, no doubt about it. But once the thing is conceptualized, it throws up its own leadership. That leadership, any member of that leadership that now goes against that conception, it's no longer a personal issue, but you are now throwing yourself against history. So you either team up with the enemy or go into oblivion. I mean, that's the only choice. But the conception remains, and if the leadership is steadfast and really understand what they have conceived, then they will develop a system, which at that time was the Action Group Party, and the insistence on federalism that actually gave them the opportunity to run the Western region based on their philosophy. Okay. So that seems to solve the problem. Like I said, it is because it happened. We are able to look at it. I'm not saying if it didn't happen, no, nothing else will happen. But what I'm saying is that so when you said earlier, the Omode is always saying, achieve. What am I getting at? Where am I going? The Agba will be saying, where am I coming from? So when they now both combine, so the Agba can tell the Omode, this is where the issue is. Yes. Based on, without limiting any effort to go forward, without saying no, you can't go beyond this level. You can't, but just to have it. And it happens in all societies. In America today, when they had their problems last year, people were saying our founding fathers. Who are their founding fathers? They were looking back into history.
Yes.
They were looking back into history. The founding fathers of America, George Washington and all the rest of them. And that propelled a resurgence of resistance and threw up the current leadership that now exists. So in a similar manner, is the same thing, that what we need to do to resolve the impasse in Yoruba land is that conception. So when they start making dichotomies, what I call false dichotomies, restriction or self-determination or this and that, they have started asking the necessary questions.
Okay.
I don't know whether I should,
No, that's fine. We'll come to that. This question, I know it would just be your opinion, because some of the things we pick is just from what our viewers or maybe what people have asked after we finish the program, and then I think you might be able to elaborate on it or to let people know, okay, this is your own opinion and views about this. People have continued to ask that. We know that if the South, that is the Igbo and the Yoruba, that had even they are able to come together, they would be able to maybe politically challenge the northern part of the country. So I'm going to package two questions here. So the first one will be, why do you think, I mean, it's in your own view, that the Igbo and the Yoruba seem not to be able to work together despite being in the southern part, the same geographical space? I mean, if we make that division of the Niger, they're in the same space. But then, why is it that they find it difficult to work together? So that would be the
first question. Okay, you want me to answer that first? Yes. Okay.
Okay, let's go for it, sir.
Okay. So that you can reserve the second, and then you can address it separately.
Okay.
Now, that only shows that the limitations in geographical definition. The fact that we occupy the same space, geographical space, does not necessarily translate into having the same pursuits based on our historical experiences. Yes, it can be said that, if the East and the West are combined, and if they are combined, like Awolowo suggested in 1959, to make Azikiwe the prime minister, he becomes the 18th, they will have been able to checkmate the North because they had the majority in parliament at that time. But that was also a reflection, since the beginning of the anti-colonial movement. I told you, I said the Nigerian youth movement collapsed in 1937 or thereabout, based on some of these issues. So if you trace the anti-colonial moves back, the NNDP formed by Macaulay was the major anti-colonial party at that time. When Zeke came back from the United States and then became the secretary, Macaulay was the president or chairman. I think Macaulay died in 1946. And Zeke assumed the leadership of the NNPC. Now, most of the various anti-colonial movements at that time were based on their nationalities. Let me put it that way. So you have the Igbo State Union, you have the different Yoruba groups, unions, and stuff like that. So what he did was to make sure that the Igbo became dominant in the NNDP. And then when they formed the National Council of Nigerian Citizens and all that, the Igbo State Union became the backbone of the effort. So now Azikiwe was championing what he called Nigerian nationalism that has no ethno-national basis. In other words, that you are a Nigerian regardless of who you are. Which has no philosophical, sociological, or historical meaning. But by virtue of his preeminence at that time, as he was well known, he was what they call the Zeke of Africa and all that. He was doing all that. So, but here was Awolowo saying, look, the problem of the colony was a problem of national liberation. self-determination for all the nations. And if we are going to form any union, it must be based on that recognition. So Azikiwe took on Awolowo and then started all kinds of stuff, lying against Awolowo. Then they want to break up the country, they want to do this, they want to do that, such that even when the Yoruba in Kaba and the Ilorin provinces wanted a referendum, a plebiscite, for them to be moved from northern region to western region, Azikiwe and the NTSC collaborated with the North to prevent it from happening.
Yeah.
That is why Kaba and Ilorin still remain in the North today. The same thing for Lagos, that they wanted to excise Lagos from western region by claiming that it's not part of. So they connived with the North for the same purpose. And when they had the 1951 western regional election and the action group won, then they started the lie that no, the cross carpeting, tribalism, and all kinds of stuff like that. In other words, Azikiwe and his Igbo NCSC did not recognize the existence of Yoruba nationality. There are certain quotes which may not be necessary to quote today in this thing, but there are certain things that they said and they promoted at that time. When Egbe Omoduduwa was founded and it was going to be launched in Lagos, Azikiwe got some Yoruba people to form what he called the Yoruba Federal Council to counter Egbe Omoduduwa. And of course, when they were going to launch that council, nobody showed up. Anyway, so what we are saying, so these are the background. But despite that, Awolowo still felt, okay, let us work together and stuff. But what I'm saying is that working together has nothing to do with geographical proximity.
Okay.
It has to do with your political and strategic and ideological projection, which for the Igbo or the NCNC, it was to deny the existence of the nationalities while recognizing themselves, so because they say they are the only nation builders in Nigeria, because they can live anywhere, therefore they build nation. All the rest of us, we are not nation builders because we don't go beyond our, which was a lie. So when you have that, the only way a collaboration will come will be a strengthening of that regional arrangement that will allow each region to do what it wants to do. Just like the education thing. When Azikiwe saw what was happening in the Western region, he went quickly to the East and tried to copy the same thing, but couldn't succeed because of the socio-cultural issues in the East is different from the socio-cultural issues in the West. Before the Awolowo group, they will go to the Alake then, Badimola, and the Oni then, nobody, so they are late before them. This is what we want to do. What are we going to do? How do we go about it? They will debate it and stuff, and then bring it to the government. So you have all those socio-cultural differences, which will have been managed if only the East recognizes the existence of the nationalities. So, but by not doing that, because the North was saying at that time, they don't mind a federal arrangement as long as they are in control. Yeah. And that was what led to that alliance. So, in a sense, you can say that, yes, theoretically, it would have been good and possible if there had been a unity of purpose between the East and the West, that would have strengthened that federalism at that time, unlike when it was simply sabotaged, let me put it that way, by the East and the North, with all kinds of shenanigans like that. So, if we are looking at it now with today's perspectives,
because that's where,
yes, all these things.
That's where that's the next one. So you're already answering, looking at it in the present perspective. Yeah, today's perspective.
So the first thing would be for everyone to recognize the national identities that make up Nigeria. There is no running away from that. The Igbo must recognize that Yoruba is a national identity, a nationality. So, of course, they are also a nationality. They must recognize all other nationalities. Those who make that recognition can establish any relationship they want among themselves for their own progress. And this will be defined and delineated. Those who refuse to recognize the nationality is like saying I'm not a Yoruba man, but I'm a Nigerian. I can't accept that from anybody. So if there are some people that are saying it doesn't matter, and then they can go their way. Because I matter. I matter to myself and I matter to God. That is basically, there's no running away from that. So what we need to do is to emphasize that recognition that anything that we want to build must be on the foundation of that recognition that we are separate nationalities with separate histories, separate cultures, even in the South. Not just between the North and the South. Let's even leave the North aside for now. Let's say the South. Between the yes, we have interacted, we have communicated. When the Awolowo regime was doing their education, people were coming from the East to live in the Western region so that they can benefit from that. They didn't discriminate against them. They allowed them. So once that recognition is made, the question of relationship will be resolved. And then the question of socio-economic development. What passes for developmental economy among the Yoruba may be different from what passes for developmental economy among the Igbo. So by having that opportunity to live according to your philosophy, without, like I said earlier in the earlier period, we can't separate Nigeria from the general decolonization of the African continent. We in the Yoruba extend formally to Benin Republic and informally even up to Ghana, as some explain. So we should be able to relate with our brethren anywhere in the world. When the University of Ife was conceived, they had a foreign language department, and it was Portuguese. At that time, it was either English or French because of the colonial thing. But they decided on Portuguese. Why did they do that? Because they knew that the largest Yoruba presence outside the African continent is in Brazil. Yes. And so they wanted to create a relationship between the Yoruba in West Africa and the Yoruba in Brazil. And they established a Yoruba house in Bahia. Of course, the central government took it over and turned it to a Nigeria household. And what became of it. So what we are saying is, these are fundamental issues that cannot be papered over simply by geography or by I won't even call it necessity or political pragmatism. If the East and the West unite, we can defeat the North. That is not the purpose of our existence. Yes. The purpose of our existence is the manifestation of all the gifts and all the resources that God has given us for the development and maintenance and progression of our society. And once we understand that, then we can relate with anybody, if possible, but not of necessity. And then, because we are also not living in isolation, we are also a beacon of light to the rest of the African continent. I mentioned Congo the other time, because they did not solve the problem, the Katangese problem at that time. See where Congo is today. And then if you go further back into history, you will see that when the slaves revolted in Haiti in 1804, in the Western Hemisphere, all the colonial powers at that time ganged up, including the US. They ganged up against Haiti and destroyed overthrown its revolution. And Haiti remains poor as it is till today. Now the question is, what would have happened had Haiti succeeded as an independent African country and state at that time? What impact would it have had on the African continent? You see, so these are questions that we have to address and imbibe in our solutions, so that it's not just an empirical knee-jerk reaction that appears to be common till today. Today. I don't
Okay.
know whether
Yes, you've answered it. We'll go for a shorter break now, and then we'll be back. Listeners, viewers, thanks for staying on with us. We are not done yet. I'm still coming back with Mr. Femi Odedeyi from Yoruba Referendum Committee. Please do stay on with us. Right, welcome back. I'm still with Mr. Femi Odedeyi, and those Yoruba speakers that are listening to us. They are part of the programs in the past that we've done in Yoruba language, but also in order to let some people that may probably not understand the deep part of it. So we're just giving them the opportunity also to pick what we've been discussing. Remember, Mr. Femi Odedeyi is on this program every two weeks. So, but we're moving on to the next segment of this interview. And you're welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And this one has to do with the concept and conceptualization that you spoke about earlier. And you did mention it, how the conceptualization was done during Baba Awolowo's era. So the question now is that this is where we are today, with all the challenges, the security, the leadership, and the whole lot of things that is happening in the country. We know that Yoruba, like you've mentioned, right from inception, we've always had this push to have our own, which you can call self-determination structure, whether within the larger Nigerian society, as regional government also, where also we have some other people saying that let's even get out completely and leave Nigeria. So that move is on. The question I want to ask when it comes to the area of conceptualization, do you think with what we have all around, from your own assessment, that we Yoruba people have actually conceptualized the future that we want with all these agitations that is on at the moment?
I think so. And here's why I said so. You know, all these agitations and everything, if you compress everything, like you mentioned in your intro, we always look at what we call the golden era.
Yes.
So we have an idea of what could have been if certain things were in place. That idea is what is driving all these generalizations, even if they don't go beyond that golden era. Everyone agrees that at one point in our lives, we had a situation where we had the opportunity to address some of these issues of development and all that in a positive way. So that's why I said I think so. The question now is, having said that, the question now is, how do we change the situation to our favor? That's
it.
why we now have all these different agitations and all the rest going on, which is also a normal occurrence in a state of flux like this. But while all these things are going on, like I said, if we say conceptualization and all the rest, the fact that we are referring to the golden era is the beginning of conceptualization.
Okay.
And then because you see that, there's an alternative to this thing. And then the question is, how do we get there? So some will now say, let us go permanently. Some will, okay. Some will now say this and that. Fine. It is within that mix that the methodology, the how question will be addressed and arrived at. As long as, again, when certain demands are made or certain slogans are made and all the rest and this and that, it is always within a context. So if you say, yes, let us go, the question is how. If you say, no, let us do this, let us do that, the question is still how. Okay,
yes.
We are now in a situation where there could be some kind of emergency or a military coup, the way things are going. How do we respond to it? There could be just a long drawn out stuff, and by 2023 they will have their elections and somebody will be proclaimed president. How do we respond to that potential? There could be a general breakdown, not even a general breakdown, a localized breakdown in Yoruba land. In other words, they can stampede the Yoruba into taking certain actions that will now allow the central government to clamp down on Yoruba people. How do we respond to that? So these are different issues that where the conceptualization comes in. Because once you consider what the Awolowo people did when they did their conceptualization was not only to say that they are opposed to colonialism, but they mapped out a way of getting out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So in this period, you weigh all the various angles and then find a particular way to say, okay, if A happens, it's like when you say, I used to have a senior in the secondary school in those days. When he gets angry at his juniors, he will come to the dining room hall and say that I am a stone and you are an egg. If you roll on me, you break. If I roll on you, that kind of thing. So, that when you have such a stone, as it were, all other things become eggs. So it is that stone that we now use to pursue a response. But since we don't have a regional Odua government, it is not. It is the central government will not even register a political party to protect and advance Yoruba interests.
Yoruba, yes.
If anything happens like that now, the danger that we face is that we are also respond in a scattered manner. Meanwhile, whoever it is that is the case, that they will be organized to deal with it. And once they do that, we will have to be organized on. So that's why we came up with this petition and the referendum. So we are saying one, because we are human beings created by God, We are the only ones that will determine our. It's not the United Nations or anybody that will come and determine our future for us. We are the only ones who do that. How do we do it peacefully? We need our state houses of assembly and governors to conduct it.
Yes.
Legitimacy and validity. Why is that petition very important? It is important because it can be likened to our own Yoruba party. If the government is not going to, we know the central government is not going to register a Yoruba party. And then we know that we can't just be talking here and there and all that. If we have a sizable number of signatories to the petition, that is our own political party, even though technically it is not going to be recognized as such. But because we have it, that gives us that legitimacy that we have, that we can now call our administrators and all the rest. And if they don't do it, we already have a party in place.
Yes.
And that party can go to any extent it wants to go to. But so that is our indirect way of conceptualizing. So when you have that, if anything happens, a coup, a state of emergency, stampeding, and everything, we already have a standard. We have the stone that will challenge it. Okay, a coup happens. All we need to say is no. The only thing we can do is to recognize our referendum when we do it. If a state of emergency, no. If the only thing we can do is to recognize our referendum when we have it. If some benevolent dictator arises and say, I can solve all the problems, we say, no, we don't need you to solve our problem. We can solve our problem. This is the way to go out. So, by that, we have created that has conceptualized, that's a conception.
Yes.
We have conceptualized it because we can use it to respond to any eventualities. Whether we hold it or we don't hold it, that petition gives us that legitimacy to say that, no, this is what we want. And we have already stated what we want. So, and because, like I said, no one is arguing against the golden era. Nobody can argue against the golden era.
Definitely.
Nobody can argue against it. We can now say, how do we bring it to the 21st century and all that? And we can debate that. But the question is, we have something to fall back on, and all we need to do is to fall back on it. And because everybody is, like I said, nobody can argue against the golden era. So all the various groups and organizations and all the rest of them, they also make references to it. But none of them can say they want to establish, they can only propagate it. They can't effectuate it. So Afenifere, for example, can say everything, can form alliances, can do everything, but it can't bring it about by itself. No organization can do it. But if the Yoruba people are united behind this petition, and saying this is what we want, whoever becomes the leader will know that, look, it's like during the Egbe Omodudu and Action Group that somebody will now say, I don't agree with you. And they will ask him to go away. Because they have already, even when the tension arose between the Egbe Omodudu and the Action Group, whether they should transform Egbe Omodudu into a political party or not, and all that, and we have to have a political platform. It was because Egbe Omodudu had already established the platform, and they built the political party out of it, and then put it forward. So this petition, this platform, and this referendum is the platform that gives us that push, the needed push. Like I said, if we want to reduce it to political sloganeering, that petition is our political party that they cannot reject, because we are deciding this is what we want, and we don't need to submit it to INEC for registration.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much. Just to clarify that, is that if we Yoruba are able to have like a referendum to say this is what we want, whatever happens after, even if there's a military coup, it will be a substantial, a solid something that is on ground that,
Yes.
yeah, Yoruba, this is what we want, whatever type of government comes in.
Yes.
And that's why it's very, very important, because it represents the voice of the people. It's not really one politician saying that, okay, this is what the Yoruba people want, or maybe one group or organization saying this is what we Yoruba people want, because like you said at the beginning that we have many groups. So why one group might say, I think it's restructuring that we need. We might have another group that will say that, no, we are actually leaving Nigeria completely, and they're fine. But the issue is, what will be considered to be the general voice of the Yoruba people? That is what this referendum is approaching to resolve or to establish, so that we can put it that the Yoruba people have decided majority, because obviously whichever one you put down, it's not 100%. But where we have the majority, just like when we had the Scottish referendum, where we have the majority, what the majority of the Yoruba people are saying, that becomes the democratic voice of the people. And whoever is not put forward to lead that cause, it wouldn't be maybe what he or she thinks. That person will actually be carrying the democratic voice of the people, of the Yoruba people. I will quickly take us into that petition itself, because I have it right in front of me here.
Okay.
So let's see whether I can get it on for us. Yeah, that's the petition. So this is the current petition, which is online.
Yeah.
And from what I have here, we have 7,900, which is a good achievement.
Yeah.
Just quickly before I come to you, viewers, okay, we've got this petition, which is asking the Yoruba people, you don't have to be in Nigeria. Yoruba people anywhere in the world, you can sign this petition, and the petition is not directed at the federal government of Nigeria, because we don't have business with the federal government of Nigeria at this point. This is targeted at our own people, our representatives at the state houses of assembly in Oyo, in Ogun, Ondo, Lagos, Osun, and we've also mentioned that later the Yoruba people in Kwara and Kogi will be drafted in, but we need to first resolve the Yoruba states that are fully Yoruba states. So the petition is actually asking the governors and the members of the State of Assembly to turn the referendum bill into law. That is, in each state, just the same way that a Motekon bill was turned into law, that the referendum bill will be into law. And what that means is that for the states, House of Assembly, pass the law that we have a right in each of those states to carry out a referendum. And that's actually their own job that we need. They are our representatives, and if they believe that they are representing us, then if we, the people, are telling them this is what we want, they should take it. Now, at 5,000, at every 5,000, a letter is sent to all the governors and the speakers of the state houses of assembly. That has been done. The initial letter has been sent out when there were 5,000 signatures. It's just for those governors and the state houses of assembly to know that the Yoruba people have started a petition. Now, once it gets to 10,000, the same thing will be done to governors and members of the state houses of assembly, and not big that we got to where we are now. So I'm coming back to you now, Mr. Femi Odedeyi, and I think we ought to do this one first of all to appreciate people who have signed this. From the statistics that is before me, it's been shared 5,738 times. That's massive.
Yeah.
So for those that have shared, for those that have signed, so first of all, I want you to obviously appreciate it. And the backdrop of that, also to let people know why this is very, very, very important. Go on, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have said it all, as it were. The mobilization through the petition, we are also going on ground. We are producing flyers that will be distributed and also used to mobilize, and we have some canvassers or mobilizers, let me put it that way, that will be talking to people on ground, and encouraging them to sign and all this, and we are doing it systematically. And like he said, we appreciate those who have signed. We appreciate those who have shared. And we appreciate even those who are yet to sign for whatever reason. What we are just saying is that we have a platform where we are expressing what we think or what we see as the way out to this the conundrum that the Yoruba people find themselves, and that we are also, engaging with other organizations and individuals to get their members and the people, their spheres of influence, to come on board with this thing, because it will serve actually two purposes. One, let our politicians know that the Yoruba people want to take their destiny into their hands. Two, send a message to the central government that, again, the same message, we want to take our destiny into our hands. So nobody will come to us like they usually do and say that, don't worry, when you elect me into office, when I get to the president, I will restructure. Because they will always come to Yoruba land. The last time they will come, they won't go to any other part of the country. It is only in Yoruba land they will come, and then they will say, don't worry, when you elect me, I will restructure. Because they know that's what we want. It is the music we want to hear. So they will come and tell us the music, play the music, and when they win, they will go their different ways. So we want to put a stop to all of that. That even a Yoruba candidate must succumb, well, don't let me use must, succumb, it's a strong language, must flow with the aspirations of Yoruba people, and not expect us to say, okay, we have done it before. Obasanjo was there, and that one of the ways he used to destroy Afenifere was to promise them that he's going to do this and that, and they fell for it, and then the result is what we are seeing today. So what we are saying is, this is a way, a peaceful, legal, valid way to take back our destiny into our own hands, because with it, we will address any issue that arises. Herdsmen ni kò ṣe herdsmen ni wọ́n ti gba gbogbo ilẹ̀ wa tán by illegal mining ni wọ́n ti gba gbogbo port gbogbo ẹ̀. They will be, because it's an omnibus bill, omnibus, what the lawyers call omnibus bill, a bill that takes care of everything. So, we don't need to be shy about it. I just want to make that appeal. We don't need to be shy about it. All we are saying is, instead of forming an army and then falling into the hands of some international arms merchants, we can do this peacefully on our own. So I hope that summarizes it.
Yes,
But you
that's
have said it all.
yes, that's great. So it's for the people to continue to sign.
Yes.
The link will be put on the comments of this video, and of course, people could watch this after today. Of course, also people can share it so that people could listen to some of the areas that have been trashed out by Mr. Femi Odedeyi. I was expecting that you're going to tell people how many signatures you need, so that.
Oh, well, sorry about that. Well, I mean, we are targeting a minimum of 100,000 signatures. Of course, we say that we are 40 million or 50 million people worldwide. If you can get 25 million to sign, or even 10 million, that would be fine. But we are targeting a minimum of 100,000 because, one, I doubt if there's any political party in Yoruba land that has that many numbers, people as members.
That's yes.
So that gives us an overwhelming base from which everything we do can then flow. So that's our target, and we are still a long way to go. We are yet to reach 1%. Is it 1 or 10%? 10,000 is 10%, Abi.
Yes.
We are not even 10,000 yet, but we need to go, and we need to move fast on it, because as things are going, things are degenerating in Nigeria, and all kinds of positions are coming about. And one political reality is this: despite the fact that we are yet to reach 10,000, if some people feel threatened enough about what we are doing, then they can introduce some kind of political shenanigans and throw everything into confusion. And then we'll be saying, what happened? What happened? So we have to move fast. And I'm just appealing to whoever is listening, whether you have signed or you have not signed, to let us push forward with it and reach the minimum goal that we have set ourselves. We are not saying that it is the Yoruba referendum committee that will organize the referendum. No, because it is in the bill. That is to put the pressure on the houses of assembly and the governors to pass the bill into law and conduct the referendum. Our role is this mobilization, such that when it grows, we will have a Yoruba platform that everybody can key into, so that any leadership that emerges at that point will become a Yoruba leadership.
Great.
And then none of them will be able to turn their backs on us, because we have already established it. This is where we are going. So you don't come and give us any abracadabra anywhere.
Yes. And and those people also will be carrying what we've given them.
Yes.
So yeah, because those are, I think you mentioned briefly part of the areas that I want to use to round up, which is really talking about some misconceptions about this petition. I know obviously you've mentioned about who is going to conduct it, because I think it was an issue about the committee cannot conduct it. So which you've clarified that the referendum is not going to be carried out by the committee. I mean, it's the State House of Assembly that will pass the bill. Obviously, the governors also will assent to the bill and sign it. When it becomes law, then, since it's a law for Yoruba land, then the Yoruba people with their political representatives cannot decide how do we want to conduct this referendum with maybe the structure we have, or whether we're going to bring up another structure, at least to be able to conduct.
The structure even exists. The structure exists through the local government, the state electoral commissions and all that. They can adapt it. They can adapt it to suit the purposes of the referendum. And it's even in the bill itself that they can, even the form of ballot paper and how it's going to be conducted, everything is in there. so that there is no ambiguity. It is only, like we said, there will always be people like that who want to create confusion. They will now say, so you want to conduct the referendum? No, that's all you need to do is to read the bill, and everything is explained there. And now, even if the governors now say, okay, they don't want to use the state electoral commission or local, fine. Then they let them create the structures for them to conduct it. But what we are going for is the legitimacy and the validity of it, which the houses of assembly and the governors can make happen. That is conception. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So the and the area when it comes to that of the United Nations, I believe, and do correct me if I'm wrong, that what the Yoruba Referendum Committee is saying is that whether the UN will even get involved or not, the main people are the Yoruba people to decide that this is what we want, and then any engagement that will be done with maybe any international body or any national body when it becomes necessary, we will have decided. It wouldn't be like the United Nations coming in to say, now you want to decide for you, or we want you now to decide. That with the resources we have in Yoruba land, I mean, we have people that are very, very intelligent. We can see their record all over the world, that we are capable of holding a referendum to be able to get, to harvest the views of our people on the way forward for Yoruba land. Some people that are talking about United Nations, they said, because United Nations is an international body, and they believe that if the United Nations is involved when things like this are happening, that it gives maybe a sort of a stronger force to it. Is that your views as well, sir?
No. First of all, for the first part, you are very correct on your presentation as to what we expect. So just to say that is what you said. Now, on the United Nations was not established to create nations. It was actually established to solidify the relationship between the colonial powers. So yes, they talk about self-determination and they have this and that, but they were talking about self-determination of the colonial countries, colonized countries, not the self-determination of the peoples within established, recognized states. That is one. Yeah. Two, so if the United Nations is going to be involved in anything, it only responds to the stimuli that is coming from the outside. That is, okay, this thing is happening here. How do we prevent it from further degenerating or further promoting peace? And they will send in their UN troops and this and that, and they will do all kinds of things. But to expect them to come and initiate a self-determination referendum within a country, we don't even need to look far now. The United Kingdom is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, where all decisions are taken and rejected or accepted. The Scottish people did not advance they didn't go to the United States to say, we are going to do this for us. Up till today, up to the elections they held yesterday and stuff.
Yesterday, yeah.
About the United Nations about it. It was between the Scottish people and the UK government and their own political issues. Now, if let's say the Scottish independence referendum takes place today, and the independence forces win, and they say yes, Scottish independence, the United Nations has no choice but to recognize Scotland as an independent country. All the countries, all the examples that people give about Soviet Union broke up, this thing broke up, this. It was because of the internal contradictions that emerged that allowed these countries to go their ways. And then by that, they became members of the United Nations. The only instance where the United Nations went to be part of a referendum was South Sudan. And we know right from the beginning of the independence of Sudan in the 50s, the Southern Sudanese have been fighting against the Sudanese government. And then you have the Janjaweed and the Darfurian and all the rest. And then you have what they call bleeding liberals in America raising voices about the killings and all that. And then you have China coming into Sudan and America wanting to checkmate China. And then, you know, they decided on everything. So the question is, what we need is the legitimacy and validity to stand up in the international community to say this is what we want. If we don't have that, there's no international agency that will come and do it for us, unless they have already put us in their pocket. And then they will do it and then be dictating whether we wake up at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. They will be dictating. So, and then for purposes of when we say self-determination, it's not just a geopolitical categorization. It's an expression of humanity. And then you say you are a human being, you want to express yourself. Okay, but you can't do it. Oh yeah, man, come and do it for me. And then we turn around and say they are exploiting us. So the major work that needs to be done is how to mobilize ourselves for that purpose. If to say that we had a situation where we can have a political party, a Yoruba political party, even if not a Yoruba, a regional political party, we won't be talking about referendum. We'll be asking the party to have a platform for this as an election platform. But since we don't have all that, we have to create something that will push us and energize us forward. So that's it. That we won't, let's say we get to 100,000 or 1 million, I'm telling you, they will be running helter skelter.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's leave that aside. That is the central theme behind all these things. You know, that the question of legitimacy. You know, during the Abacha period,
yes,
the legitimacy of NADECO was because Abacha had already declared war on the peoples of Nigeria. So that was what the NADECO people used to fight and then obtain their legitimacy, and then the whole thing collapsed on his head. The current regime is still pretending to be a victim of insecurity, armed banditry, and all this and all that. So let us solve it together. No, we have to be able to know that one is a consequence of the other. It is the Nigerian state, the failures in the Nigerian state that led to these issues that we are, and so we need to address that failure.
Definitely. Okay, thank you very much, sir. I think that's the ones that I could pick. Just because we're rounding up now, and I know that since you've been promoting these, you might have people asking you questions. So what question, or which one do you think is the hardest question that people have they've asked you on this referendum?
The hardest question is, okay, if we get this petition and all that, and the Houses of Assembly refuse, and the governors refuse to do it, what will we do? I believe that's the hardest question so far, because one, a lot of people are very cynical about the Houses of Assembly and the governors. And all that. So when they now say, okay, what if they refuse? What are we going to do? And then, of course, one can take a spontaneous we will fight them. No. What we are saying is, let them refuse, or at least let us put it before them and let them refuse. But like we have been saying, once we have that legitimacy through this petition, that we have 100,000 or more people that are behind what we are asking for, and they refuse it, that 100,000 people has given us the rights and the legitimacy to do anything we want to do to address that question. We can't preempt them now. We can only make plans, but such plans may not be relevant as time goes. But once we become solid, and then recognizing that they may or may not do it, of course, everything will factor into the plans. But it's like we are building up our own fighting force, and then you have to put everything into it, and then look at. So that's the major issue that appears to be because what they will say is, these politicians, this and that, they will not do it, they will not do that. Okay, if they refuse, what will you do? Then they expect me to say, oh, yeah, we go on demonstration. No, that's not what you are doing. But that's the bottom line, that we need that platform. We need that platform to really engage both the Nigerian state and our politicians.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, and I think that brings us right to the end of the one for today. Until we have you again in another 2 weeks. I'm sure there are meetings going on among different groups, of Yoruba groups.
Yeah, that's true.
So, where boundaries, where they could meet and where they could forge ahead in one goal. And of course, also we have we started preparing for the 2023 elections with INEC and some other activities. In fact, I think it was yesterday or earlier today that we had a report that there's also a number of new political parties have been registered. So activities are going on. And I believe that is your wish and that of the Yoruba Referendum Committee to have this petition passed into law before the 2020 election.
Yes.
Because it's going to determine quite a lot.
A lot of things.
Yes, a lot of things. A lot of things moving on. Especially in substantiating the Yoruba stand when it comes to Nigeria, they call it Nigerian nation or country. So I believe that by the time we meet again in another 2 weeks, God preserving us, we'll be able to look into all those collaborations, and then we'll be able to know where exactly Yorubas are at that time. We're also looking forward to have a more interactive sessions where we'll be able to bring maybe other people in to ask questions and to engage with what the Yoruba Referendum Committee is doing right on here. So thank you very much, and I will leave you to go and enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you. I always enjoy your, even though you keep asking me to say this and that, but I enjoy your company and I enjoy the interview, and it's very, very good, and I thank you for the opportunity that you have provided.
You're most welcome.
And I hope our collaboration will yield positive results as time goes on, for the good of Yoruba people and good of humanity. Because when we are good, we project that goodness to humanity.
Yes, definitely.
So,
thank you very much. You're most welcome, sir.
All right.
Àgbàrá òjò ló wò nílé wo bí Ṣàngó nílé ní orí gbà fún un. Èé ti rí èé ti ṣe. Àkọ́kọ́ dáyé àṣebáyé kún kárìnrìn kàlàkà sọ̀rọ̀ kàlàlà. Òpẹ́ kò jìnnà wọn láti gbọ́. Ṣé Fúlàní yóò wá borí wa? Àgbààgbà nílẹ̀ Yorùbá ẹ dìde o. Ẹ̀yin Àgbẹ̀kọ̀yà ẹ dìde. Ogun Fúlàní ò gbọ́dọ̀ borí wa. Tani yóò padà táyé sí o.
Ẹ̀yin àgbààgbà ìlú kí ló dé o? Tẹ̀mí ìṣòro bí ewé kí ló dé? Ẹ̀yin ṣe yan bí ọba ìyẹ́ ti ṣe. Àgbà ìlú aṣòro yéwé.
Wọ́n bá wá ní bàbúbà ẹ̀fọ́ wọlé rán ẹ̀sìn ń wòran. Àbòdì ìgbà tí Fúlàní bá gbẹ̀mí gbogbo lé tán. Ọjọ́ ọ̀la wá sódìgbà tí wọ́n bá fi tàbàlà. Wọ́n lè ní ajá sóró.
ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ bọ̀bọ̀ alóyin lòun àpèdè má pè tanná ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ ròde ìbànújẹ́ èèwọ̀ òrìṣà ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ́ba ń jó gbogbo wa ló mọ̀ yẹ ká mú pátì dùn ṣebí tiwa ni ara ò ní tán nílé alára láíláí ilé mo borin ilé mo bá lù àtàndá ti ṣẹ́kọ̀ náà ẹ̀yin tẹ́ ń fẹ́ wa ẹ̀ máa ṣe gan-an.
Èmi ò lọ́nà méjì láyé tó dorin lọ orin ṣá ni iṣẹ́ mi ò tó dá mi lójú ẹ pè wá síbi ayẹyẹ ìyẹn nígbàkúgbà Enjoyment is a player ó ṣíwọ́jò ó láàmì mẹ́tì ló ń pèdè ẹ̀mújó akọrin bí ẹni jẹ̀kọ́ ìjòyà ó láàmì mẹ́tì ló ń pèdè ẹ̀mújó akọrin bí ẹni jẹ̀kọ́ ìjòyà.
Line ho, uyu line lelo mana mene, mana wanzeru. Line ho,
line ho, uyu line lelo mana mene, mana wanzeru. Ukaja mama wa amatengazaje kuzeza bakomo pamaiwaje.
ugaja mama,
Early morning
amadingataje.
kuzeza bakomo la maiwage.
Magoro wali, amuya mikila.
Akutirine lero mwana mene, mwana wanzeru.
Magoro wali, amuya mikila.
Akutirine lero mwana mene, mwana wanzeru. Line ho, uyu line lero mwana mene, mwana wanzeru. Line ho, uyu line lero mwana mene, mwana wanzeru.
Agire gogo wana madingo, namu ya mikira. Kudi na madingo mwana mene, mwana wanzeru. Agire gogo wana madingo, namu ya mikira.
Mukuti na madingo mwana mene yu,
mwana wanzeru.
simuku na mako
Kawizi na
ni malota ine, bambo wanga tandisi enda
salandeka. Kawizi na
mwe ni malota ine,
mambo anga atamwalira ndaksalandika gondo mama gondo une mama mwe gondo mama chalamanda
Tafera moenda we Gondo mama gondo une mama mbe Gondo mama chalamanda utafera moenda we